This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptile. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
All right, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast. This week's topic is a little abnormal for us. So obviously we talked a little bit in last week's episode about how Karsten was basically issued a cease and desist from Wizards, where they said, hey, stop giving out metagame data, that's our data, we get to do what we want with it. So in light of that, we figured let's highlight some tools that we use and ways to use existing tools differently now that Frank Karsten's data is no longer there for metagaming, which was actually pretty important financially for people to be able to predict how the meta was going to adapt going forward. So
yeah,
certainly worth looking at.
Absolutely, and that one's a little bit difficult because previously you could kind of take a look at the meta and see where things were going and figure out that a lot of people were just going to jump on the best deck boat, so to speak, and figure that out. Now you need to pull a couple more aggregate sources to figure things out and where are we going from there and what we're looking at. For me, though, the best thing that I've been using for meta is actually mtgmeta.io, and I'm going to bring this, see if I can find this metagame share.
Yeah.
So, where is it? So, mtgmeta.io, we talked about this last week and I think the week before. And basically what it does is it'll aggregate a deck list for you, and you'll be able to see what the aggregate list for anything in particular plays. Right now we're looking at Mono Red Prowess because it had the second most meta share in Modern. And it will also show you its win percentage against some of the top decks in the field. The nice thing I like about this is that when you are looking at the metagame for a given format, so we'll go through the process. So we're at the metagame page, we'll go to Modern, and we can actually select our date ranges, which are very important because you can see that they do, right now, bind them essentially by banned and restricted announcements. So you're getting several months worth of data in one go around. And right now we're looking at current data. And then we can see as we scroll down the matrix of what does well against what. And you can begin to say, okay, the first one is ad nos in the list, just alphabetically. And the matches this has showed up, this is playing against the field in certain percentages.
Yeah.
And we can take a look at that and see what's kind of creeping up over time and begin to make dedicated decisions. For instance, we know that Croxa was popping about 2 weeks earlier than it seemed the majority of people in finance did. People noticed it at Worlds, but Redo could put a video up earlier. Others had moved in on that in Modern Jund. And if you were following along on mtgmeta.io, by the time most people realized that Croxa was great in that deck, and it effectively brought about a resurgence in the Jund deck, as well as a slight shift in the Modern metagame, that card popped, and it had become a 2 of in this aggregate, on this aggregate website that had been looking at the last 3 months worth of data. There were enough lists to have changed that data. So having this in front of us was very important. And this tool is very easy to slice and dice. And if you follow them on Twitter, they're actually looking to add additional insight. And they've been putting out some kind of polls with imagery. What do you get from this? And I would recommend following them because that's going to be able to teach you how to slice and dice this data as we move forward. This has become one of my go-tos for the last couple of months when we talk about, I'm trying to build, Amulet with Valakut. What about these cards in the list? You hit the aggregate and say, well, they're playing them in these numbers, or nobody's played it yet. Maybe not. So.
And similar to that, in addition to metagame, I've been using aetherhub.com.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, so it's interesting because it pulls its data from basically here are the tier 1 lists. And it pulls it from, it says major tournaments. So what are major tournaments? Major tournaments are basically anything that is Arena Championship, NRG Series, MTGO Challenges, Leagues, IQs. They even pull deck lists from PTQs at the Magic Fests. Okay. And it's basically, this is the meta at the high-end tables. So it's not quite as informative as like metagame because that obviously goes from broader sources. This is just looking for like the top. And I think that for me, it's been good because keeping up with like Legacy, for example, has been pretty difficult because the Legacy metagame is so diverse. There's so many sources and everything. So seeing like the MKM series, for example, is tracked religiously on this site.
Yep.
And, being a Legacy player, I tend to care more about that metagame. So it's allowed me to basically take a look live as things have developed and see what's working where. And in addition to that, if you want to be super lazy, you can pick the deck list from their dropdown, and you can buy it from TCG Player, MKM, or Card Hoarder if you want to rent it.
Oh, that's pretty dope.
Yeah, and I think for me it's been pretty good. They also have Commander and Brawl. Now those are basically just user uploads.
Okay.
So they ping EDH Rec as well as their own deck hub for what the most popular uploads are in recent months, which obviously EDH Rec is a huge source of information. But if you want like a condensed version, going to the Commander page now, Corvald is the most popular post with 1.68%. So like there's a lot to choose from, obviously, but it's at least a nice little snapshot for that.
Yeah.
And on that note, obviously, MTG Top 8 and Goldfish are something that we both harp on pretty regularly.
Yeah.
For like, this is what's important, this is what's impactful now. And especially because those sites have such a high exposure that, Metagame and AetherHub are mostly aggregates of information rather than financial drivers. It just lets you inform your decision. Whereas like Top 8 and especially Goldfish, those are more financial drivers, in my opinion. Paying attention to that information is like, all right, well, this is where it's going to go. And Metagame and AetherHub are like where it could go.
Yes. And
just use those four basically as like different tools for different things. This is where the meta's at. Let me see what's popping on Metagame. Let me see what's popping on AetherHub that's good against these.
Yep.
And then try to swing into those. That way you don't have to wait for Pascal Maynard to post a 5.0 list and then decide, well, I guess I'm getting all the grinding stations.
Yeah, right. And everybody and their mother makes a run for it, and thus everybody sells out quickly and embarrassingly, because that card is just that.
Yeah.
Brian Gottlieb posted a great photo of a grinding station that he had from when he was playing Standard and Mirrodin block that had BOP written on the back. That's how bad that card was. It was just a proxy. Yeah. That's all it was worth. Speaking of stocks, something I wanted to talk about, because I don't know how many people actually use the functionality, and this is like one of the last things I actually use this website for. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Nope, not going to look good. So the search functionality for stocks. So speaking of Croxa, we'll just stick with that. You select your format. You can select the level with which you want to search for, and it's going to bring back as many aggregate results as it can. We search for Croxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. But the function I want to actually talk about is being able to select any number of decks from the search results and say, okay, what does stocks show is the aggregate build set for all of these things.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to build your deck with a longer historical point of reference, it's going to be stocks over decks, just because you can select that wide range and kind of build from there. Whenever I update Valakut, this is what I go to, because I know there's a lot of slots that flip between 2-4 splits in one direction or another, so I like to see what everybody's playing. And I know the sideboard well enough to guess what people are playing. But you get a huge selection, especially when it comes to sideboard cards, and you can see, like, all right, in particular for Jund, Ashiok Dream Renderer is run at a 1.5-ish rate, so you're probably looking to play 2 no matter what.
Yeah.
And this is a really good reference, not necessarily for finance, so to speak, but more for playability. It's hard to really pull a lot of insight from this because stocks is missing result sets, and we don't know why yet.
Yeah.
It is good to see what's going up and down in meta share from the results they are getting, and that's just kind of default functionality pasted across all of the formats that they support.
Yeah.
But attempting to make very specific decisions based on MTG stocks is becoming more and more difficult.
Yep.
to replace that, I've actually been using mtgdex.net,
Yeah.
which has been on top of everything,
Yeah.
as far as I can tell.
That's actually very good. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's similar to if anyone used to pay attention to deck chat way back in the day. It's really accessible. It's an easy to use interface, and all the information is just right there for you.
Yep, and it as far as I can tell, the data is it's super high level, so it's just going to show you currently, based on all the results they've gathered, what percentage of the field is represented by a deck with a given name, and then you can click through that and you can see, okay, these are the decks that have done X in events Y, and then you can start digging in and then check for yourself to see what people are playing, and you get everything. You don't just get top 8s and 5-0s here. Like, I've seen a lot of 3-2s and things like that. And for the most part, it's spot on. The only thing that I actually have a lot of question about in regards to decks, and this is my fault, and I should have done this a little bit better. I don't know where they gather all the information regarding deck names.
Yeah.
Because if you are a vintage player, those names do not line up at all.
No.
Right now, I think Jace Storm it's not a stacks deck, but when you read through it, there are no Storm cards in it at all. It might actually be a survival deck.
Let's see.
So.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's just the site has a little bit of
meant or paradoxical, basically, is what some of them are, and some of them do have survival.
Yeah, the vintage stuff is all over the place, but you can definitely hit decks and you can see everything that they list, including Highlander, which I assume is essentially EDH but on Moto, so it might be CEDH. But they're taking care of Pauper, Pioneer, Frontier. Basically, if you can play an event, sanction it, and submit deck lists for it, they've got it. And this has actually helped me recently looking at Doomsday piles.
Yeah.
When I mentioned Doomsday last week, Spoils of the Vault the week before, I gleaned a bunch of information from decks and the Legacy subreddit just to see, okay, I know Doomsday's always a card I keep my eyes on. It was going up and up and up. People are playing it a little more in EDH now. If you check Rex, it's actually a pretty highly played card. But I wasn't quite seeing it in Legacy yet. And what was happening behind the scenes was there's one or two people just championing Doomsday in Legacy, and those lists hadn't hit yet. They hadn't hit decks or anything else. So cross-referencing the Legacy subreddit with this got me where I needed to go with Doomsday, and then Spoils of the Vault for Modern was a bit of MTG meta to see where Adnaz was, to see if it had popped yet.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even on the site for a couple days. And then we were watching a handful of players try ad nauseum lists with more filtering, more sleight of hands, more serum visions, and Spoils of the Vault to win basically the turn you cast Thassa's Oracle. And so using decks and meta, I was able to kind of craft that pick a little bit ahead of time and get there before it really took off.
Yeah, which I think is very important because, talking about wanting to stay ahead of the game and what we do as financiers, you need to be informed, and the only person that's going to do that is yourself. Mm-hmm. Can't tell you how many times we've seen some post on this subreddit, and then everyone gets in on FOMO because FOMO is real, and they just end up getting hosed on it because they just don't properly prepare for it. It's like, come on, guys, you know better.
100%. There's a little bit more I do in regards to stuff like stocks and how I filter, which I think is also important to talk about. I don't know if you do anything specific there.
As far as filtering and stuff goes, it depends on the format. So when I look at the recent decks, for example, and I look at a card like Croxa, to use your earlier example, looking at the recent decks, the top 5 recent decks, it's all modern. So I know we're about to head into modern season. Mm-hmm. So paying attention to those on stock specifically is a lot more important because, and I'll touch on this later, heading into modern season, these cards that we've seen sort of taper off, not that Croaks is one of them because it's obviously gone up, There where the opportunity is.
Yep.
That's what you're going to see as we head into modern season and people get back on the grind for a format which everyone assumed was dead. So that's the important thing for me to look into is what format wise in the top decks for a card is important to look at.
Got it.
And if I see a card where it's 5 standard, well, then I probably don't really need to pay too much attention to it in modern unless I can see some interaction that's important for it to have.
Yep.
So
well, that's understandable. In regards to stocks, I've kind of made it an at-a-glance application for me. So my filters, I'll see if I can show them real quick, are pretty basic. I keep my percentage at min, which is 2, but my difference has got to be $1. And that allows me to take a look at anything that is statistically significant from the previous day. Because if you drop the difference below $1, you get a lot of noise, but you filter out more better options, but you lose some as well. So for instance, Guardian Project, which is now a $5 card, and if you missed it, it's gone until they reprint it because it was only in Rav Allegiance and the pre-rekit.
Yep.
It never coming back, but looking at the price graph,
that's an EDH card.
Yeah, 100%. You read it, and obviously, but it didn't hit my filter because my difference is $1. Had I set it lower, I might have been able to actually get in on Guardian Project. And this weekend, CK was buying them for like $2.85 cash, so maybe like $3.20 credit.
Yeah.
So, stocks is definitely something you need to play around with a little more than almost anything else because it's 2 sliders. It's only 2 sliders, but it makes a world of difference.
It does.
So, there's a point where when I was talking to somebody in the industry a couple of years ago, they were we were talking about stocks, and they said they like to actually keep their filters at the lowest possible settings, but note the smallest gainers throughout weeks, and then start to move in on those and put them on their buy list so that they could stock them for when the actual demand comes. And the example they cited was Necroskitter, whatever, before it was reprinted in Modern Masters. That card just went up cents a day, cents. And eventually, demand hit, and it popped to somewhere between $2 and $3 from bulk. So for them, what they were doing, like I said, was looking at the lowest percentage gainers and noting them day after day. And that was how they did things and noted when they needed to start putting cards on their buy list because demand was coming. You know, it wasn't 2 days, it wasn't 3 days, it was 5, 6, 7, 8. The card was just going up and up and up. And that's indicative of the lowest price versions being sold from TCG Player at that point in time, because market didn't exist. It was just average, which means the average goes up and up and up as the floor creeps up and up and up. And that was a good indicator for them. I've turned it back on, and it's not bad, but you know, this is a for you kind of thing. Whatever you want to do, you do.
Yeah, whatever your preference is or what data you want to base off of, that's the thing. Is like there are only 2 sliders. So it seems like not a lot, but the amount of information you can gain from just those 2 sliders is huge. You just have to know what it is you're looking for and then just go for it.
Yep. No, 100%. There's some other stuff that I use as well, but before I continue on, is there anything more you use?
I mean, those are the big ones. And then, of course, you know, there's like as the Cabal, we have some scrapers and stuff that we use that's more of like a personal software thing that I think are just useful for searching. And, you know, Trader Tools is a prime example. When you're looking to unload, knowing the best place to unload, where the best buy numbers are, something like Trader Tools on Quiet Spec can be good for that.
Yep.
Because it does allow you to get a snapshot of, it'll tell you what's the best buy list for this card, what's the worst, what has the best retail, and stuff like that I think is more of a customizable, and once you really get into the nitty-gritty of MTG Finance, that's when you start doing those things. Yep,
absolutely. A quick hit before I talk about some of the development stuff, which you touched on, is EDH Rex top cards. You can actually find some interesting things in there that creep up in popularity before price. And it's very easy to find. It's just right along the top. Top cards. The saltiest ones are generally an interesting place to look because they still keep a myriad of banned cards on there. But if you start looking by color, that's where you note a couple of weeks ago that like Wheel of Fortune was actually less played than a number of other red rares.
Yep.
That weren't wheel effects and just generic effects that should be everywhere. So you can kind of look ahead and say, okay, if these effects are good enough to be in enough generic decks, there is no specific general to them, like Punisher cards that go in Zozu style decks and Punisher. Like, you can say, okay, maybe it's time to move in on those Wild Ricochet and the Fork with Buyback. Great. What's the Reiterate?
Well, Reiterate. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Like, Reiterate is up and down all the time.
All the time.
And let me see if I can bring this up on stacks real quick. It's a Time Spiral rare, never been reprinted, so it only has the foil and on from Time Spiral. And you can see, right after BFZ, after a steady climb, it starts going up and down and up and down. And this is one of the cards, when you start watching the top red cards and you can see if that card starts to climb in popularity, you can move in. It is a $9 card right now, but if they're available, you can still pick them up and out them for a profit later.
Yep. It's pretty good.
Absolutely. So the development resource I want to talk about, and I've used this before, but I didn't have anywhere to store it long term, so I could only show current prices, is MtG JSON. And basically what this does is it's a gatherer search combined with a price aggregation from MTG stocks and TCG Player, despite the fact that they're pretty much the same data right now. And a little bit of, what's the right word? Standardization in regards to naming, identifying by number, etc. And the reason I want to bring this up is because people do ask about historic pricing data, and this service does offer historics. You just have to know how to hit the historical file, and you can start parsing through it yourself. You can either start running through it and storing it somewhere for your own usage, or build your own tool that hits the service and can pull the individual data for the day and then just begin tracking naturally. This doesn't pull any hard data from DCG Player in regards to population or number of vendor count with the card. You still need TCG Player API for that, but this is at least a really good trend tracking tool if you have the ability and the know-how to use it. Again, like I said, I've done it before and I've effectively made it my own little gatherer, but without the way to store the files and access and report on the data, it was almost useless for my purposes. But A+ resource if that's your game.
Yeah, it's very good. And I think that's, as we move into, I guess, the next generation of MTG Finance and MTG financiers, this type of software is the stuff that's really going to be what drives the industry and finance as a whole.
Yeah.
Is seeing okay, how can I automate this process? How can I get the most aggregate data possible with the least amount of effort? So something like JSON or a custom tool is going to be perfect for that.
Yep.
Because it'll get you exactly what you need when you need it.
Yes. And that's why services like Quiet Spec just work, because they built their own service for people to hook into, for vendors to hook into, not people to hook into, and offer their buy list numbers through their service to people that pay for it. But it's a brilliant service and a brilliant model, and we wholeheartedly advocate for that because it allows you to maximize your time and your profits, and that's what we champion here.
Yeah.
You go, you do it. You just make your money hand over fist.
How can you spend the least amount of time to get the best possible return? And that's where it is.
Yep, and that's what all these tools are about.
Yep.
Everything we talked about is something we use. It's something you can use on a daily basis. Like I said, everything that I try and do is at a glance in the morning. So I try to make things as quick and easy for me to read as possible. And in doing so, I built a handful of tools for myself and our Patreon members to take advantage of when they're surfing around Card Kingdom and some other sites. And it just becomes incredibly helpful. You always underestimate the convenience of something like this. You're like, oh, I can just sit here and click on a bunch of links from a document that I built and have to update manually and redo every couple of weeks. I'm like, that's not max convenience.
No, and that's the thing I think a lot of people miss out on is the valuation of time. And tools like this make it so that, yeah, I can spend 5 minutes doing what used to take me 5 hours.
Yep.
And it's just done. I'm ready to go. I'm moving on.
And that's what we're all here to do. Like I said, save money. Sorry, save time, make money.
As easily as possible.
Yep. And it's a good time to show. Like I said, we are working on products for our patrons. There's a project that went up a couple weeks ago. Another one went out today. There's another one in the works that hits direct buy list.
Yep.
And you feed it any amount, but all these tools, you feed it cards and it will just output buy list numbers.
Yeah.
Or in some cases it has to be direct links because people don't serve up a convenient buy list to ingest. But this is something that we're doing, something we're offering. So if you want to make life easy, it's just $1 to access some of this stuff.
Yep.
All right.
Worth it.
Absolutely. Because I built it. Picks.
Yes. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'll start here. We're getting into modern season. So modern cards, which had kind of flattened off and been a little dead, you're going to start to see improve and come back on the up and up. And I know I touched a little bit earlier, a few episodes ago, on fetch lands. I am specifically picking here Khans of Tarkir, Polluted Delta. And the reason for this is until Breach gets banned, which I feel like is inevitable and going to happen, and even after Breach gets banned, Grixis is a really good color combination in Modern right now. Command is probably the best piece of removal in the entire format that's not Path.
Or Fatal Push.
Or Fatal Push, yeah. But being able to answer an Emery and a Mishra's Bauble or something else is just great when Pascal Maynard's list is all over the place and Underworld Breach is dumb. And if you take a look at the stocks graph, this is the lowest right now that Delta has been since February of last year. So we're at a year-long low, and we're about to get into modern season, and presumably we're getting Scalding Tarn and all those in Return to Zendikar. Don't know for sure, but that's when Shocklands rotate, blah, blah, blah. We can talk about that ad nauseum.
Yep.
But Polluted Delta is my pick because Grixis is good, and because additionally, as we all know, price memory is a thing. And blue-black lands have the best price memory. Underground Sea, Watery Grave, Polluted Delta.
Underground River.
Prime example.
Drowned
Underground
Catacomb.
River. Yeah, at any of those. They just, for whatever reason, ever since the olden days, blue-black is the strongest color combination. Those lands are worth the most money. That's just how it is.
Yep.
Even when it's not the strongest color combination in a format. It's the strongest color combination in the format because of price memory.
Yep. And so it's not just the Underworld Breach style decks that are using these. You're also looking at Death Shadow builds that use them. That deck is still a fan favorite. It's not doing terribly well at the moment, but it definitely is a thing. Just generic Urza Thopter Sword control or Grixis Wurza plays it as well. This is one of the pieces of glue for that deck, as opposed to Tarn, which doesn't go across all of that. You might. I'm trying to think. I think I played one Tarn or maybe two Tarn in Grixis Death Shadow, but I played more Deltas because it got everything.
Yeah.
And it is always the cornerstone. Conveniently, though, piggybacking off of your pick, you can't play my pick without your pick. And my pick is Emery, Lurker of the Loch. So Emery, for whatever reason, is on the downswing. Emery's on the downswing. You can't play the Grinding Station combo deck without Emery. You can't play the Urza combo decks without Emery. You can't play Thopter Sword without Emery. Emery is what allows Mox Amber to replace Mox Opal on turn 2. Emery, as a card with affinity and the ability to continue to buy back your artifact shenanigan strategy, is, short of Breach, the glue as well as the combo engine for a lot of these decks.
Yeah.
There's no, aside from the fact that there's every version of this card, you have set foil, you have pre-release foil, you have extended art and extended art foil. There's no promo pack yet, right? So there's five printings of Emery.
Yeah.
And there's, if people are buying Grinding Station for this deck, they have to be buying Emery too.
Sure do.
Yep, and we'll take a look at the stock graph, and you can see that the market's riding a little low now. It has been for a while. It's always been under. But we haven't actually had the Grinding Station deck pop off.
Yeah. So far, it's been a tweet.
Yep. And there was one copy at the Star City event the week before their team open.
Yeah. 2 or 3 weeks ago?
It was
maybe?
It was the Grinding Station combo.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it on Top 8 real quick.
Sure.
It was the Grinding Station combo, and you got to watch it on camera. It wasn't tuned. It had one Grinding Station. The new version runs 4. And that just makes it infinitely more resilient and reliable. But let's see. Urza Star City Classic. Let me pull this up. You can see came in somewhere between 3rd and 4th at the Classic in Indianapolis. There's an IQ came 2nd and another IQ. Grand Prix Austin, it was there. This is just Grinding Station we're looking at.
Yeah.
You know, this has been around for a hot minute now with Emery.
Yeah.
And
it was a card that prior to that, casuals loved. I remember when this card came out, and it was similar to the picture that was posted of what it looked like when it was in Standard, where it was drawn with a bob. You had your Station combo deck. It wasn't good, but you played it.
Yep. And like Emery's not a hugely popular card in EDH as a commander or in the deck itself, so you're not really going to be looking at a lot of movement there. You're never going to really see it in Oathbreaker. It's not needed in the Jace Wielder deck. It's just another piece. This card is meant to combo, and combo it does. Right now it's in Modern as we move further towards the Magic Fest season, where we have 6 large high-profile events coming up. The better the Grinding Station deck does, the harder and faster the subsequent mandatory pieces of this deck will move. If you go back and you look through Pascal Maynard's tweet history from the other night, he played 2 different Grinding Station combo decks. They were both base blue-red for Breach and for Emery. The end.
I think also, touching on the comment I made later about how Breach almost has to get banned, Emery is a card that existed in Urza for a little bit when Oko was in the format.
Yep.
Emery has too many synergies that even in the event of a ban of Breach, inevitably it's going to be in some other broken deck.
Oh, yeah.
It's just how it is.
Yeah,
I think that even, if you get in and you're not able to get out before a ban hits, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I think you're still fine.
Yeah, this is a card that doesn't quite reach down into older formats yet, but it can. It absolutely, absolutely can. Apparently, it's in Steel Stompy and Auric Salvager combo deck lists in Vintage. Sorry, that's in Legacy. In Vintage, it's apparently in what we termed the Jace Storm deck earlier. Jace Storm, Urza Engine, and Paradoxical Storm are all essentially the same deck, but they're all abusing the synergies that Emery provides by allowing you to return that artifact, and then mill over whatever you need, whatever you can set up in older formats. If this card takes off there, at that point it'll never come back. I don't think we're not seeing that Emery was the incorrect card to leave in the format and take Mox Opal instead, but we are most likely going to see that shortly with Mox Amber taking the place of Opal. You're not going to see Amber banned because it only powers this one card. Yeah. And if you remove the one card, Amber goes back to being nothing. And as you said, Emery just offers too much. It's way better than the reverse Goblin Welder. whatever that one is from Modern Horizons.
Yeah, strictly worst Goblin Welder.
Yeah.
That's all I call it.
That card came and went. It was in Modern Horizons. It was in the Grixis Urzalos for a hot minute and immediately got replaced with Emery. The end.
Yep.
That's all you need to just make that card better. It's just a 1/2 that costs a blue because it has literally the keyword or the unkeyworded version of Affinity.
Yeah. Just call it Affinity.
At $2.20, there's no reason that you can't or shouldn't move in on these, especially in trade.
Yeah.
If you have modern players in the area, a lot of them are most likely going to want to play the best deck, and this is going to definitely turn out to be one of the best decks. Breach just does it. It can't quite protect itself well enough with Force of Negation because you have to pay for that on your turn.
Yeah,
but you still have cheap interaction in the form of Spell Pierce and Mono Leak. You can still get work done to protect yourself if people do start adjusting to this combo. And even with Graveyard Hate, you're still essentially base blue, which has infinite ways to deal with onboard permanents and then catch them on the way back down, or reset them as the turn you go off.
Yeah. It's too much advantage, I think, play-wise.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of decks to keep up with when there's only 1 or 2 efficient pieces of removal for the card, and you can get use out of it the turn after you play it.
Yeah, and it gives every artifact flashback. 1 a turn.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be like Spoils of the Vault. This is going to be pick it up now. You got to wait for Modern Season to really kick off. So we see some of these results coming in. So you have a window of opportunity right now before this card, picks up. If you had all the money in the world to spend on different versions of this card, I would still probably move in on the set non-foil because it is the cheapest version, thus the most accessible, and most likely the easiest one to churn. The foil full art is like $40-some, maybe close to 50. I checked the other day.
Dumb.
Yeah, I had some credit floating around. I was like, cube update, but I'm not paying $50 for that thing right now.
No.
But
it's pretty rough.
Yeah, this is a card I've been. It's taken too long to pop.
Yeah.
And
I think part of it was being devalued by a million different versions of the card existing, as we have touched on ad nauseum about how bad that is.
Yeah, and a larger push for Pioneer. Now that WotC is going to be pulling back from Pioneer and pushing Modern more, now we can start looking at Modern cards like Fetches, like Engine cards like Emery as possible financial vehicles. You got to watch out with Secret Layers and some of the other things coming down the pipe. But unless Emery is added into, not next quarters, but when they redo the promo packs, Emery could be added to that. But that's the only time you're going to get hoisted by a brand new version in non-foil.
Yeah, true.
So this is a card I would definitely look into, like I said. And who knows, maybe it takes over the Memnarch spot as the commander of the Dick Mono Blue EDH deck.
That would be great.
Because that's all that deck needs.
Yep. Another way to do that.
That's enough rambling for me tonight. I gotta get going and get some stuff done with this next application. But we're here next week. We're here every week. You can catch us at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter. You can find me at Halt I Am Reptar. Currently poking Justin Parnell to try and get some cube input.
Nice. You can find me at Thirsty Sizzler.
And we are located at MtG Cabalcast on Patreon. And if you're interested in what we do, the services we are providing through these the applications we're building, the giveaway March 9th, or even coming to see us at the NAMI event May 2nd.
It's going to be gas.
It's only $1. See you guys next week.
See ya.